I'm here. I'm just going to touch on a few ideas, really tip of the iceberg type stuff, but just to get the ball moving. We're under a time crunch as well, so going to make it as quickly as possible. As we all know, tourism is the heart and soul of our economy. We're an economy based on snow, lake level, and lake clarity. So a warming climate should be terribly, terribly concerning to us as a city. As Bonnie pointed out, the climatic changes that have already taken place are going to create more climatic variability in the future. Climatic variability is going to lead to economic vulnerability. We need to expand and grow new sectors of the economy. We need to do it rapidly. I put it to you this way: if our economy was a stool, in the face of vulnerability, many legs is far more stable than a single leg. And a robust climate change mitigation plan can begin to expand and grow new components of our economy, that being the innovation, tech, engineering, science, education, trades, just to name a few. Outside Online recently published an article, entitled "The Outdoor Life is a Magnet for Tech Geeks." What this article is saying, above many others, and a lot of research, is that young tech millennials want to live places for quality of life purposes, opposed to proximity to work, which was the traditional model. And those people want to come live in South Lake Tahoe. We just need to make that possible. I have a quick funny story. When I first had kids, I had one of those unique experiences where a buddy calls me up and he says, why don't you come over to a barbecue? It's starting at 9 o'clock. And I remember looking at the phone thinking, 9 o'clock? He might as well have told me that barbecue was on the moon, because I wasn't going to show up at 9 o'clock. And so what I did is decide to start to make all new friends with kids in my 30s, which is a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of people that were coming to live here with kids purely for quality of life purposes that work in the tech industry. So I listened what they had to say and compared it to the research. And what we need to know about this group is that the tech field is a demographic that is being coveted by everyone. So it's a very competitive marketplace to get them into your town. Secondly, it's a demographic that overwhelmingly supports action to mitigate climate change. I'd have you look no further than the actions being taken by the titans of Silicon Valley, your Apples, your Googles, so on and so forth. So what we need to do is we need to have a built recreational environment that allows people to come to South Lake Tahoe, work in the tech field, enjoy the outdoor lifestyle, while also mitigating climate change. What's really interesting, actually, is that a lot of things that would be a component of our overall climate change mitigation strategy are currently being supported by members of this community and members of the chamber and the business community. This includes things like the ideas put forth in the Prosperity Plan, the town center concept, multimodal options, recreational interconnectivity, the loop road, and so on. But what is the real irony is, and what is ultimately sad, is we simply just don't sing to our climate change successes, our climate change mitigation strategies. While communities like Aspen are getting international praise and kudos, love from the recreational environment, love from the environmentalists, and a huge economic boom for being the third city in the United States to go 100% renewable, the city of South Lake Tahoe is simply getting none of this. We're not in the press. This puts both our brand and our product at a competitive disadvantage with those that we compete with. And I put it to you this way. Recent discriminatory lawsuits, you've all seen this in the news, weren't thwarted by the will of the voters at the ballot box. They were thwarted by large companies threatening to pull out of the state because those news laws did not reflect the will of those companies or the will of their consumers. We need to be clear, our consumers overwhelmingly support action to mitigate climate change. Again, this puts our brand and our product at a competitive disadvantage. And to prove this, I would like to put this idea out there. When everyone leaves tonight, as you're walking through Heavenly Village, what I'd encourage you to do is look at the shops that line our stores. I'm thinking about Patagonia. I'm thinking about North Face. I'm thinking about the rest of them. And what's interesting is not only does their product and their company aggressively support action to mitigate climate change, they also brand their product that mechanism because they understand the marketplace demands it. We too need to do that. This will have really a twofold effect, in my opinion. First, it will begin to build progress in our overall climate change mitigation strategy. And secondly, it'll publicize our climate change friendliness to the business sector, recreational enthusiasts, tourists, and those that we want to bring to the city of South Lake Tahoe. There's a reason when you look at Heavenly or Harvey's, Harris, that they spend so much time and space advertising their environmental stewardship and their climate change friendliness, because they understand the brand's important. So we must not only brand our products and aggressively support action to mitigate climate change, we have to publicize it. Because unfortunately, the competitors we work with and compete with for finite recreational dollars are doing this right now, and I have to be honest, they're beating us. One of the ideas I had going forward, and I work as a land use planning consultant, as I already said, is looking towards a more incentivized-based regulatory system. We need a regulatory system here in Tahoe that actively seeks environmental progress instead of holding it back. In 2012, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency adopted the Regional Plan Update, or RPU. This document began to move things in the more incentive-based model. Two examples of this were the coverage exemptions and transferring entitlements from an SEZ, Extreme Environmental Zone, into a town center, which we're in right now. I know people in the environmental community had concerns about both of these incentivized provisions, but I truly believe from a climate change perspective, they were necessary to get us where we need to be. And I really believe that for two reasons. The first being, when you look at a project, a 40-year-old building, and then you compare it with a new project, the energy savings, the water quality improvements, and the health and safety benefits are staggering. We know locally that our largest contributing factor to climate change is our outdated buildings. Retrofitting those buildings is going to be arguably the single greatest component of our overall climate change mitigation strategy. And that strategy is going to require large sums of capital. Millions and millions of dollars here locally, trillions and trillions of dollars internationally. So we need a regulatory system that allows for retrofitting to take place. Those incentive-based models through the coverage exemptions and the transfer process provided flexibility into the system. That flexibility inspired redevelopment and began to retrofit old buildings. The second reason I think it's important, and this incentive-based model is important, is it also opens up new green jobs here in South Lake Tahoe. A quick example I have is, a good friend of mine is Andrew Ryan. He owns PR Design in Kings Beach. They just bought a new building, they're hiring new people, and they're also working on cutting-edge pervious surfaces. Andrew Ryan could not have achieved that without the incentive-based model put forth within the Regional Plan Update. You know, as I've said, I'm a land use planning consultant. I would like nothing better than to stay here in South Lake Tahoe and work on projects that are not only good for the community, but also help to mitigate climate change. Those projects are going to be designed by our engineers in the basin, both on the ground and in the cloud, permitted by our friends at the regulatory agencies, and finally built by the craftsmen that live in all of our neighborhoods. This is something us at the Chamber we talk about a lot, and that is the idea of top-down regulation. We know that things coming out of Washington and Sacramento aren't necessarily tailor-made for us here in South Lake Tahoe, our goals, our objectives. And whereas I have the sincerest admiration for Governor Schwarzenegger's 2000 law that allowed California to become the first state in the union to cap greenhouse gas emissions, or Governor Brown's 2015 law that required California to up their percentage of renewables to 50% while increasing the energy efficiency of buildings by 50% by 2030, we would be somewhat naive to think that those are tailor-made for South Lake Tahoe. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do we want to see what's coming? Do we want to see the momentous shift that's taking place and grab those reins, create the community we want, create the economy we want by helping the environment, or we want to wait, be dictated to by Washington, by Sacramento, fall behind our competitors, and simply lose the greatest advantage of our time? So with that, I just want to say, before I give it back over to Bonnie and Generation Green with what you can all do to fight this, I just would like to tell you that, I didn't come here lightly. I was just truly fortunate to spend a time with some terrific minds. Those terrific minds put me to a lot of time at study, and that time at study put me to a lot of time at thought. There was that, and then there was my dad. My dad was a terrific man. To know him was to love him. and he always had fabulous advice. And I'll never forget what he told me about honesty, and that being, you have to be honest with everyone. You have to play everyone straight, because if you don't, without that trust, there can be no progress. And so with that, I had to be here tonight, because I came to realize, besides everything you heard tonight, everything Bonnie told you, everything I'm talking about, all that time and thought, do you know what I really want? What I really want through this exercise? I want it to always snow. And I know everyone in this room can relate to that. I know that's where we find our commonality. Because I came to realize that whether we're looking at our children's eyes tonight, or we're looking in the mirror at the end of a long life, we don't want to say we did as little as we could. And so before I give back to Bonnie, what I do want to say to you is that everyone here tonight, everyone here that took time away from friends and family to be here because you cared, that spent the money to walk in the door, you in fact, you are that ripple of hope, and I can't tell you how much I thank you.